And just like that, we've reached the final Premier League weekend of the season. Seems just like yesterday, back in August, we were looking ahead to the new campaign and making our predictions and getting them wrong. Hello everyone, Mark Donaldson alongside Don Hutchison. We're going to have predictions to see who's going to get the Champions League spots. In addition to Liverpool, Arsenal and Tottenham Hotspur, 5 into 3 doesn't go. We're going to look back in the next half hour at our player of the year, our manager of the year, our surprise of the year, and our flop of the year. But I want to start, Dawn, with the Champions League race. No title race at this last weekend of the season. That's decided. We know who's going down, but we don't know who's going to be in European competition. Let's start with Manchester City. They're in third. They go to Fulham. A draw's probably going to be enough. They'll probably win. So are we saying that they will join Liverpool, Arsenal and Spurs and make it 4 in the Champions League? Do we need to worry about them at all?
No, I mean, I respect Fulham, but they're a side, I think, on the beach on the last day of the season against the City side, by the way, Mark, in the league are unbeaten in 9, and their performance against Bournemouth was very good, could have scored a lot more. I think City will make it. I think Newcastle at home against Everton. Everton are terrible on the last day of the season, always have been, even when I was there. I remember a game against Southampton when there was nothing to play for, and Southampton needed a win down at the Dell, and we stunk the place out, and Southampton beat us, and Walter Smith went crazy because we didn't have that juice and that adrenaline in us to try and get anything from the game. So I think Newcastle will beat Everton. The big game, mate, has to be Forest and Chelsea. I mean, that's where all the jeopardy, to all the drama. No wonder LME's not on the show tonight because he's panicking. He's got no fingernails left, so he can't bear to be on the show. He won't be able to watch the 90. But, mate, honestly, the drama in that game, it's going to be incredible.
That's probably the game of the weekend, with both sides still having a chance of Champions League. Chelsea, of course, in 5th right now, so they occupy the 5th and final spot as far as the league is concerned. How do we look at this game? Because both sides know that they can still get Champions League, but Nottingham Forest know that they can only do it with a win. So do you expect them to deviate at all from the formation or the tactics that Nuno normally goes for? And also, from a Chelsea perspective, if Forest do that, Chelsea have got a lot of pace middle to front that they could exploit. Does that mean goals in this one?
I don't know, to be honest. I think it does, but because there's so much drama and jeopardy on the game, there's a fear that either side will be too scared to go and win the game because you don't want to be the man that makes the mistake. I've been there. I've been there plenty of times on the last day. I remember a game against Coventry in 98 where we had to bet a Bolton's result, and we just about did, but it was 1-1 going into the last couple of minutes. And every time we got the ball, we just flipped it around the corner and got rid of it because you didn't want to be the man that made the mistake. I guess it's going to be a similar feeling in this game. I think the first 15 might be very, very cagey and you'll not see a lot of quality. It might be jeopardy end to end or just players helping it on, trying to get the ball and playing for territory. As the game unfolds and the tactics start to kick in and Forest's atmosphere will drive them and take them on the front foot, you'd imagine they'll be more optimistic. They can try and take the lead. How do Chelsea approach it, being the away side who like a little bit of possession where Forest are not bothered? They're more or less one of the best in the Premier League at saying you can have the ball as much as you want. We don't care, but we're going to hit you on the counter with the speed that they've showed all season in the form that Chris Wood's been in. So I think stylistically, you're looking at two sides that'll face each other and they're completely different, but it will make for a really good game of football. I've got no idea what the scoreline is going to be. Normally, you've got an inkling on how the game's going to be. Is it going to be 3-3 or 3-2? No idea, mate. But there's going to be goals in it. There's going to be jeopardy. There's going to be drama. All it needs is a couple of yellow cards or a red or the goalkeeper to do something crazy or a VAR decision to go against the team and how the game unfolds and the patterns of play. But it feels like because there's so much riding on it, it's Champions League or bust. And the reason why I mentioned LME being a Villa fan, I mean, I've got this game down as a draw, the Forest Chelsea game. So that means if Villa win, they'll go into the top 5 and they'll sneak in. But that's where the drama's all at in the top 5. It's going to be an incredible watch.
Nottingham Forest have had a brilliant season, and it's been frustrating because it promised so much Champions League, and now it's looking like Conference League if they don't get it done this weekend. They've not kept a clean sheet since the 1st of April against Manchester United, and it's been a season prior to that was built on the bedrock of keeping clean sheets. Yeah. Have teams started to work them out in how you can score against Forest? Or if not, what's changed?
I think what's changed is I think from about a month ago when they played Everton at home and everyone around them that weekend had winnable games. I think Newcastle battered Man United up at St James's. Chelsea had an easy fixture. All the teams in and around the Champions League places had an easy game or an easy fixture where you think, yeah, they're going to win. And Forest's approach against Everton was something that I've not seen all season. And I got the feeling, I commentated on the game, it felt like they were looking over their shoulders. It didn't feel as though they had that eyes on the prize and beat Everton at home and they're going to get top 5. It's almost they were a little bit afraid to go and dip for the finishing line. So I think what teams have done, teams have obviously worked Forest out a long time ago because everyone, knows how they're going to play. They're going to say to teams, you can have as much possession as you want. We're not bothered, but we're going to hit you with a counter and we're going to be dogged and we're going to try and keep clean sheets, even though, as you said, they haven't got a great record of late. That's what Nuno, I think, will build this game on in the first 15. It'll be don't give anything away first 15, first 20. Keep the fans on side. Try and make sure you're on the front foot. If you've got to go long, go long. Long throws will come in the box. Corners will come in the box. And I think they'll ride that wave of being on that front foot and keeping the fans engaged. What you don't want, I think, if you're a Forest fan at the City Ground and seeing a Chelsea side turn up and slow the game down and just having possession and going sideways and taking the noise out the stadium. So Forest have to make sure they approach it and they've got to make sure basically they play the best version of themselves.
I've got a couple more games, and you mentioned Newcastle, Everton, and I want to look at Man United against Villa. And after we've looked at them, I want to look at what Champions League money would do or would not do for various teams next season. We've already seen Manchester United coming out today, and the suggestion is they might have to get rid of more staff, and they've lost maybe over £100 million by not qualifying for the Champions League next season, having lost to Spurs in the Europa League final. Before we get to that, Newcastle against Everton. Now, the pre-match press conference of Eddie Howe talking about Alexander Isak and his fitness, and they'll have another training session. We'll see how he is. It's a big drop-off. Callum Wilson's a really good striker, but he's not played much, and we saw that last week when he started in the absence of Alexander Isak. So without Isak, if he doesn't play against Everton on Sunday, Anthony Gordon's not really got back up to speed following his injury. Jacob Murphy was subbed last week. Where's the Newcastle goals coming from on Sunday if Isak doesn't play?
St James's Park. They can turn it on against anyone. Honestly, they can. They're a side that demand your attentions and your game plan has to be on the front foot. I'd back Newcastle to beat anyone, and I mean anyone. I've seen them beat Man Cities. I've seen them being the best sides. I've seen them smash Spurs by 6. The fans demand it. I think on any given day, I think you might see a game where if Isak's not fit, I think he'll be on the bench. And I think if needed, he might come on for half an hour or 10, 15 minutes. I think talking Champions League and the money that it will provide if Newcastle make it, I think it'll quieten the noise because Livramento's been linked with Man City today at right fullback. I think Pep said today there's no way back for Kyle Walker. He's going to come back from his loan move at Milan. So you'd imagine at Man City there's going to be casualties. Newcastle are a team that's got loads of top-end players. Liverpool have had a long-standing interest in Anthony Gordon. Every club, including Liverpool, Man City, would be after Alexander Isak if they didn't make Champions League football, so it would quieten all the noise. I think what's happened, I think you're going to look at an Everton side who had all the emotion of Goodison Park last week, and it's going to be hard for those boys to try and raise a leg for that game up at St James because it doesn't really matter if Everton win the game. They don't go anywhere in the league. There's nothing really to play for. Branthwaite, I think, done his hamstring late on in that game, so Michael Keane will probably play in his position. Like I said before, I've been in an Everton side where, on the last day of the season, there's nothing to play for. We need the juice. We need adrenaline. That's what footballers thrive on. So I think you'll see a Newcastle side that's got it all to play for, and they'll put Everton under pressure. I think they'll win the game comfortably, to be honest. I think it'll be one in the first half an hour.
Yeah, and what you can also do with Newcastle, you could play Gordon as a false 9 or through the middle. You could have Barnes one side, Murphy on the other. You get goals from Bruno Guimaraes. You get goals from Tonali. So even Kieran Trippier from the right-back area can get forward. So, yeah, that's going to be a tough one for Everton. Newcastle win, they'll be playing Champions League football next season. So the other game, Manchester United against Aston Villa. I mean, this is all about Villa. What kind of Manchester United opposition will be provided after what happened on Thursday night?
Who knows? Who knows? The kit man might play. Ruben Amorim might play himself at right back. goalkeeping coach might play as on the left-hand side because he said Amram he's better than Marcus Rashford, so there's every chance he might start in the game. I think who knows? I think you're looking at a Man United side that'll be deflated. They'll be hurt. Now, normally that's a recipe for a team to bounce back. That's normally how you would see it. If a team's lost a final, a Europa League final, they'd bounce back and win the game, but they're in terrible form. There's nothing about Man United you can lean on unless they do something miraculous, which you haven't done all season. I think you might even see people like Bruno Fernandes be on the bench. I think they might play a lot of young kids. But who knows? Because their form has just been horrendous all season. They put all their eggs in Europa League basket, and that went bust against Tottenham midweek in a disaster show because neither team played well. But I got the feeling that the trophy was more important to Spurs, but the Champions League money was more important to Man United. So they're going to be a team and a club now that are going to be scratching their heads thinking how many hundreds of £1 million have we lost not making Champions League. But in terms of the game, it stinks of a Villa win. I mean, I'd surprised if the form that they've been in, only 1 loss and 9, don't go to Old Trafford and turn them over.
I think I said Thursday for the Europa League final. I'm so used to them playing on a Thursday night, but of course it was Wednesday. So out of the teams that are either in the top 5 right now or trying to get into the top 5, would you say there's one team above all the others who hasn't yet qualified for the Champions League that it's most important to do so? And I say that without really wanting Manchester City as part of this conversation, simply because they're the obvious one, but they're probably going to get what they need. A draw at Fulham, because no one's catching their goal difference, the teams out of certainly Aston Villa. So Newcastle, Chelsea, Aston Villa or Nottingham Forest. Who does it mean the most to get in, and who would it change the most as far as transfer targets are concerned if they could get in, or potentially if they couldn't?
I mean, if you're a Newcastle fan like I am, I'm going to say Newcastle because then Newcastle keep their best players. They keep Tonali, they keep Gordon, they keep Isak, they can strengthen. Chelsea have got all these players on 8-year contracts, so financially it's massive for them. Villa got harmed, and my favourite worst subject of all time, talking about PSR, it harmed Villa when they got in the Champions League. They had to sell Douglas Luiz. Newcastle got in the Champions League, had to sell Minter to Brighton. They had to sell Elliot Anderson to Forest. So it matters everything to all of them, to be honest. I mean, I would lean on it being Newcastle because, as I said, it gives Newcastle a real chance of keeping their best players and also strengthening. If Newcastle, because I think they're pretty safe, I think, this summer, because they haven't spent an awful lot on transfers. It feels like they've got a few bob to spend in the summer, only if they make Champions League. The PSR thing, I scratch my head. I can't stand it. I hate it because, you know, when Villa sold Douglas Luiz, it harmed them trying to get closer to the top 2 or 3. When Newcastle got there after their brilliant Champions League campaign, it harmed them selling Elliot Anderson and Minter to Brighton. They couldn't then kick on. And what you want is you want a fair league that can try and catch the likes of Liverpool or Man City or Arsenal. That's what the Premier League's based on. It's based on, in any given time, we've got the strongest league in the world. So it must mean something, and it should mean something. So teams like Villa, Newcastle and Chelsea have to be allowed, if they make Champions League, to try and spend and to try and get closer to the Arsenals, City and Liverpools, as I mentioned. So all those teams will be banking on the Champions League money. I think Newcastle, to answer your question, mate, I think it means so much to Newcastle fans if they can make it.
If Chelsea fail to beat Nottingham Forest and miss out on the top 5, what could be the result next season of them not being in the Champions League as far as players that they would want to attract and maybe players they might have to sell?
Yeah, that's the rise and fall, and that's the pitfalls if you make Champions League football or you don't. I mean, Chelsea have been linked with so many players, and there will be this summer. I think they want to try and bring a number 9 in, whether that's João Pedro or Šeško or some of the names that are out there. Kokoresh is another player that's been mentioned, but they're going to need the Champions League money because, as I said before, they've got all these guys on 8-year contracts. There might even be talk of Cole Palmer leaving to go and play Champions League. I don't think it will, but it'll put pressure on Enzo Maresca if he doesn't make it, because winning the Conference League for Chelsea will be a decent trophy. West Ham loved winning that competition, but for Chelsea fans who are used to winning Champions Leagues and used to winning Premier Leagues, they want to be amongst it with the big boys. So do they have to sell any players? Will Enzo Fernandez want to move on to the likes of Real Madrid? He's been linked with a move in the summer. So all this Champions League money and the lure of playing Champions League football and being in that pot in the Champions League come the summer is going to be critical. you would have thought to a lot of the players, Maresca and Board at Chelsea, they have to bank on making it. If they don't, they might be banging trouble.
Let's play a little bit of a game here. Newcastle beat Everton, get Champions League football. There's money to be spent. Are you spending quality or quantity? In which areas of the park are you looking at? Assuming everybody stays, where do you want to strengthen and with who?
I think a goalkeeper. I think Mike Maignan is a goalkeeper at Milan, I think, who is one of the very best there. They're taking away the likes of Donnarumma, who you're not going to prize out at PSG. I think a goalkeeper. But I don't think there's too much wrong. I'm not a fan of strengthening benches. I've never really had that thought process where people say thicken up the bench for your squad. I've always been under the impression if you can thicken up the 11 and make your 11 better, the guys who are in the 11 now will drip down onto the bench. I think Jacob Murphy's had an outstanding season on the right-hand side for Newcastle, but someone like Jared Bowen would boost the numbers, try and prize him out of West Ham, who might be a lifer. But, you know, you offer West Ham the trouble that they're in, who need a bit of money to try and strengthen and rebuild their squad. You offer them something like 75 million with Jared Bowen. He's going to provide more firepower. Imagine the Newcastle fans going into next season with Jared Bowen on the right, Isak on the left, and Anthony Gordon, the likes of Jacob Murphy and Harvey Barnes on the bench. So that's where the thickening up of the squads come from, if you can improve that first 11. So, again, massive for Newcastle if they can make it.
What about Manchester City? Pep said he wants a smaller squad. And you've got guys like Phil Foden that are struggling for form right now. Who would be the ones you'd be looking to move on if you were Pep to trim that squad?
Depends on the conversation that's been having behind the scenes. Is it a summer where Edison stayed one season too long? Does he want to move? Does Bernardo Silva want to move? Carl Walker, we'd imagine, will be on the move in the summer. Pep said he'll be no part of the Club World Cup in the summer. Obviously, Kevin De Bruyne left, who played his last game last week. So emotional scenes for him, which is amazing to see. But you do feel as though they need a rebuild. Florian Wirtz is the player that you would have thought could fill De Bruyne's boots. But I think by seeing what I'm reading in the papers, Man City have sort of left that race. So it's down to Liverpool or Bayern who gets Wirtz. Morgan Gibbs-White, I think there's a player who would strengthen anyone, and he would suit Man City, I think, who can be great on the counter when needed, fantastic on the ball. Another player who can play like Marmoush, where he more or less guarantees you 10, 15 goals a season, on top of have improved Erling Haaland and Phil Foden and Marmoush. So I think Man City have got their ducks in a row in terms of the squad will be better next season only if the personnel can improve. And the one that comes to mind is Phil Foden, because he's had for his standards, a disaster season. So you'd imagine he needs a summer off. He needs a complete rest. He's pulled out, I think, of the England squad for next month. So he needs a summer off. Whether he plays any part of the Club World Cup, we'll have to wait and see. But I get the feeling, talking Man City, I get the feeling Rodri's another name, absolutely, that you must mention, who got minutes the other day. So he'll be a player that, ironically, might play minutes in the Club World Cup for his pre-season. But I think when you talk Man City, I just get the feeling that Pep would want to rest the majority of this side going into a campaign next season.
Okay, 5 into 3 does not go. Which 3 teams will qualify and join Liverpool and Arsenal from the league, as well as Spurs from the Europa League as winners in next season's Champions League? We were live on the full-time whistle on Sunday, so join me and Stevie Nicol for that at ESPN FC Live. And now we look back on the season and we hand out some awards. Not quite sure how prestigious these awards are. I know Mohamed Salah picked up the Football Writers Award this week. This might not be up there with it, but let's have a look at Don Hutchison and myself and what we've done with regards to Player of the Year, Manager of the Year, Surprise of the Year, and Flop of the Season. Let's start with Player of the Year. Now, I don't know who Don's going with. Now I do. Okay, Virgil van Dijk. I've gone for the obvious one, just because I think Virgil van Dijk's probably the only one that you couldn't go against Mohamed Salah with. You could argue Alexander Isak, maybe Declan Rice, but you're just looking for alternatives to the obvious here, aren't you?
Yeah, you'll have heard of an American term called force multiplier. Basically, what that means is a guy who can improve everyone around him, and that's what Virgil's done, not just this season, but seasons gone by. He's improved Gravenberch this season, is playing as a number 6. He's improved Trent, Canate, Andy Robertson. Alisson, so he probably does need to improve him. But in terms of the player that Liverpool can't afford to be without, and Salah will put his hand up, and you're right to mention him, because his 28 goals and the amount of assists that he's had have been absolutely priceless for Liverpool. But I just look at Liverpool and I just think there'd be half the team without Van Dijk. I just think he's an absolute leader. He's class on and off the pitch. He slows things down when needed. He heads it. He boots it. He runs dead fast. He can score the odd goal. But I think everyone around him, when they see Van Dijk, and that includes all the fans on the terraces and around the world watching Liverpool, they feel that little bit more calm when he's in the 11. And he's a world-class centre-back. I'll go as far as to say he's been the best Premier League centre-back of all time.
I remember commentating on him in the Eredivisie for ESPN when he was at Groningen. And you kind of thought, my God, this boy's a threat going forward. Didn't really defend too much, and they conceded a lot of goals, but he was a Rolls Royce of a player. Went to Celtic, did so well, Southampton, Liverpool. Brilliant player. You take out Van Dijk from that Liverpool side this season, or you take out Salah, just one. Who's been the most important for them to be 12 points clear of Arsenal as we speak? The 28 goals of Salah, or just Van Dijk and his organisation at the back?
Well, when you look at the raw numbers, you'd have to say Salah, because how many points has he got Liverpool this season, and how many times has he got them over the line and scored important goals? So I get it. I get it's Mo Salah, and I'm probably in the minority, but I just watched Virgil van Dijk, and I watched Liverpool last week when they played Brighton without him, and they shipped in 3 goals, and it could have been more. They're just not the same side when Van Dijk's not in the team. I think Konate's a better player when he's got Van Dijk alongside him. Kwanzaa's another player who, when he looks to his left-hand side, he sees Rolls Royce of Van Dijk, and he settles everyone down. Like I said, Gravenberch might not have been the same player without Van Dijk just behind him. So he's been a revelation playing in that holding midfield role. But I get it. If everyone's shouting at the screen, it's Mo Salah, I would buckle and I'd absolutely give you that. But my standpoint is Van Dijk. I just think, as I said before, I think he's been the Premier League's best ever centre-back. And I think he's so important to Liverpool on and off the pitch.
I just love the fact we're talking about 2 players, one's 33, one's 32, and they're still performing to such a high level. So look, these are all subjective. Mohamed Salah has been magnificent this season. He really has rolled back the years, but so is Virgil van Dijk, and it's hard to argue against Don's point. When he doesn't play, they look nothing like they are. So that's who we've gone for our players of the season. Now, look, we both had Arne Slot for manager of the season. I was told, look, Don's gone for that. Any chance you could change it? So my first thought was Arne Slot. I've changed it to Eddie Howe just so we can get some sort of...
You've buckled!
Well, you've been there, done it, and worn the T-shirt in football, and I just talk rubbish for a living. So I thought, out of respect and due deference for you, that, I would give it to Eddie Howe for this one, even although Arne Slot should probably be the manager of the year. It's hard to argue against Arne Slot. What's been the most impressive thing that he's done in his first season in charge at Liverpool?
Well, I think it's his personality. I think off the back of Man United struggling with Eric Ten Hag and sort of seemed to struggle getting his message across, and was quite dubious in the press conferences that he was giving. His team were great 1 minute, trust the process the next, and they were losing games left, right, and centre, and he wouldn't tell you the truth. I think Arne Slot's personality shone through. I think he's very likeable. I think the media have took to him straight away. The most important thing is the Liverpool fans have trusted him. He's a bright manager. He's a bright coach. Off the back of what Jurgen Klopp left behind, why would he try and implement a different style so early on? You might see that this summer with the signings that he makes. Liverpool might be a different team altogether next season when he puts his stamp on things with a different style or different personnel or different formation. But I just think it's the way that he's handled it. I mean, how many times have you seen a manager come in, very, very few, and win the title in their first year? I mean, very few, a couple. If that, I think maybe it's Conte or maybe Ancelotti, but there's very, very few that have won a title in their first year and romped it, by the way, because the last 4 or 5 weeks, all the lads, including Arne Slot's been on a boat in Ibiza celebrating. So, absolutely credit to him for letting that little bit of hair he's got down and enjoying yourself and just sacrificing some performances for the greater good of what the players need. And the players need a rest. They need to wind down. The title's been done for a long time. Pointless trying to go for another 7 or 8, 9 points a couple of weeks ago. Doesn't really make any difference. Let these players wind down and enjoy his summer off and get them geared up and ready again for next season. But I just think it's his personality, the way he's handled absolutely everything, and he hasn't changed too much apart from being a fantastic manager.
I remember being in Pittsburgh and doing Arne Slot's first interview on ESPN. Liverpool played Betis in a pre-season friendly, and after correctly getting him to pronounce his name, because that's just out of respect, the kind of feeling I got from the interview was there was still a lot of talk about Jurgen Klopp. It was Klopp's team, and he was coming in and whatever. No one's talking about Jurgen Klopp now, as far as Liverpool's achievements this season. Arne Slot didn't do that because of Jurgen Klopp. He did it because of what Jurgen Klopp had left, but he did it his own way. And the narrative is totally changed now. Jurgen Klopp's still spoken about, of course, and always will be for what he did at Liverpool. But this was Arne Slot's tactics. This was Arne Slot's team and his formation and everything like that. So for me, that's the biggest compliment that you can pay. Now, if it wasn't Arne Slot for Manager of the Year, and because you'd already gone for him, I wasn't allowed to go for him. Eddie Howe, if Newcastle beat Everton, they're 9 points better off than last season when they finished 7th. I thought his tactics were brilliant in the League Cup final against Liverpool. He's got silverware back. This has been a year of the underdogs. Newcastle beating Liverpool, winning that first domestic trophy since the 50s. And he's done a great job. And if he can get them back in the Champions League, he's certainly in the conversation as well.
So he should have probably got that. He should have probably got that a couple of years ago, Eddie Howe.
Maybe.
That's a title he should have won years ago when he dragged Newcastle from being in the bottom 3 up to mid-table, and the season after got them in Champions League football. The job that he's done has been phenomenal.
Yeah, and you've got to remember as well, last year, 7th, they were playing Champions League football. It's very difficult. Villa did well this year to still be competing for Champions League next season in the Champions League this season. So I just wanted to give him a wee mention because of the job that he's done. And you're right, if they can get Champions League again, if they can beat Everton, players won't want to leave St James's Park, but players will want to
come. Nuno deserves a little mention, the job that he's done.
Well, okay. Surprise of the season. Let's see what we've gone for here. You can have your Nuno moment here. But I've not gone Forest because there's no other answer. If Forest get into the Champions League, and they still might, Forest has to be the answer here. But right now they're going to be playing Conference League football and they're in the playoffs because they're 7th. They may still beat Chelsea. They've fallen off a little bit. They haven't kept a clean sheet since April. They've been brilliant though. And yes, they've been a surprise. And that was my first thought. But I'm not going for them. I'm going for Palace because of their FA Cup win against Manchester City, because of their away form and not conceding goals. I think they've been outstanding. But Forest and Nuno, talk to me about the positives and talk to me about the negatives that have happened over the last 7 or 8 weeks.
There's no negatives. There's no negatives. I mean, where they've come from, they finished 4th bottom of the Premier League last season. 4th bottom, to get potentially Champions League football where they've been all season. The only thing is just the teams in and around them have hit unbelievable form. Newcastle have been in great form. Aston Villa, as I said, 1 loss in 9. Man City, unbeaten in 9. The teams in and around them have hit top form where they've had a few draws along the way, the odd loss, a couple of losses on the spin that might have hurt them. But, I'm a romantic, and on your Palace one, the romantic in me would love to see, it'll be a touch of class. It won't happen, but I'd love to see Arne Slot and Liverpool give Crystal Palace a guard of honour at Anfield.
A double guard of honour. It'd be like a Six Nations match at the end.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't that be amazing?
Just applauding everybody.
Boys. Yeah, but wouldn't it be amazing? All the Liverpool boys just clapping Crystal Palace onto the pitch for their first ever trophy. Be amazing. But I'm going to go for Nuno. I'm going to stick with Nuno.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. Look, I'm just looking for something against the obvious, because for Nottingham Forest this season to have done what they have done with, on so many occasions, less of the ball, he's done a brilliant job. He really has. And I know we had some sort of kind of statement from the football club about why the owner was on the pitch. That just soured things a little bit. Nuno has done a brilliant job at Nottingham Forest. And personally, I hope they do get into the Champions League next season. And if they do, then Palace would be second and Nottingham Forest would be up there. Now, I know we're nearing the half hour, the end of the show for ESPN FC Live in the regular season. But we do have one more category left in our... It's not really awards, is it? I mean, here, have an award for being flop of the season. Who's gone for who? Right. Manchester United. I mean, that's self-explanatory, isn't it? Are you gonna leave Bruno out of this and give it to everybody else?
No, I'll tell you who I wanted to put on there, Jim Radcliffe. Because Jim Radcliffe and Ineos have sucked the life out of Man United. They've sucked the life out of the whole club, really. I mean, the redundancies, how many jobs cuts have had. There's no spirit whatsoever at the football club. Then you go down to Amorim, and Amorim's took over, who's done a woeful job, who's done a worse job than Eric Ten Hag. I mean, when he took over, his team were 4 points behind the Champions League spots. 4 points behind. Now they're 27 points behind. He's made them worse. So the club are in absolute dire straits at the moment, from Ineos and Jim Radcliffe right down to Amorim. The players are clearly not good enough, but surely they're a better team than fourth or fifth bottom. Surely a bad Man United side who have got decent players can finish halfway up the league. So that club is being run shambolically, I think, from the very top right down to the management and the players.
I'm going to go Arsenal's board. And I was reading up on the whole aiming to sign Ollie Watkins in January. And there was a big piece in the Telegraph about this. And at the first instance, it was kind of reported it was a 60 million bid that was turned down. Jamie Carragher also did a piece on Sky and on the Overlap as well, saying it was nowhere near that. It was like 45, 50 million. Exactly. So it wasn't even 50 million that they offered. And they knew, they were pretty much told. I mean, you don't just bid for someone not knowing how much they're worth. It's like, you know how much he's worth. They wanted at least 80 million for him.
Yeah, right? Pay it.
Yeah, John Duran's gone. But they brought in Marcus Rashford, and Watkins ended up on the bench for some of them. He's an Arsenal fan. There's even talk that Arsenal were offered Ollie Watkins, and this was part of the articles from the Telegraph and from Jamie Carragher. They were offered Ollie Watkins by Villa prior to John Duran's move to the Middle East. It's the Arsenal board simply for not backing Mikel Arteta. Arteta has still not finished below the place he was the previous season with Arsenal. But right now, are they going to be second all the time? Is that going to be something that Arsenal are going to do? Get out, give the manager money, whether it's Watkins, whether it's Gyökeres, whoever it's for, Šeško, get them to sign a striker so that us, when we talk on these shows, can stop saying, what would Arsenal do if they signed a striker? 14 draws this season. If you make those 14 draws and 6 of them, you make wins, right, which is doable. Now, 2 of them were against Liverpool. If you take 6 of those 14 draws and make them wins, then Arsenal win the title because 2 of them would be against Liverpool.
But apparently we're all wrong, and the manager and Arsenal know exactly what they're doing. But we all sit here and go, need a number 9. But apparently we're wrong. I mean, the indication is the last 3 teams that have won the Premier League have all had players who have finished top scorer.
Just
so
saying.
There's the clue. There's the clue what Arsenal need. They can't rely on Marino playing as a false 9 who's a midfield player. They can't rely on Kai Havertz, who's sort of a number 10 or a wide player or a player a little bit deeper, playing a false 9. They can't rely on Jesus because Man City gave them Jesus because they were signing in Haaland. So Man City give Arsenal some players that Pep didn't even want because he realised the strength of the players that were coming into City. These guys wouldn't get a game. And Arsenal went and bought them. So it's obvious what they need. They will probably sign Zubimendi, who'll be a good signing. He's a very clever player, but he's another body in midfield. They need a number 9. They need someone that's going to put his hand up and go, do you know what? I'm the man that's going to give Arsenal 20 to 25 goals a season. Now, whether Arsenal got blinded a couple of years ago where a lot of the midfield boys scored about 10, 12, 15 goals and they thought they could share the goals around and that would be enough. No, this season showed that with Arsenal with a number 9 who could have had or could have fired them to a title. I still think Liverpool have went through the gears and won more games if they had to. Yeah, but it's obvious what they need. Staring them in the face.
And I didn't want to put Mikel Arteta there because I really want to see what Mikel Arteta can do with a main striker. And if he's got a striker that scores 25 goals and they still don't win the title, you saw they had the best defence in the league this season, but Everton were the only team that drew more games. They have to turn these draws into wins. And if they do so next season with a striker that's going to get 25 goals, that they actually open the purse strings and go out and get one, then I'm looking forward to the title race. And if it's not Mikel Arteta winning the title then he can maybe get criticised. Okay, that'll do us. There's our awards handed out at the end. A reminder, on Sunday at full time, we are live on ESPN FC with all the reaction. Find out who will join Liverpool, Arsenal and Tottenham Hotspur in representing England in the Champions League next season. My thanks to Don Hutchison. Enjoy Serie A this afternoon. Will it be Napoli or will it be Inter? We'll find out in a few hours' time. Full reaction tonight to that and previewing the Champions League race on ESPN FC tonight. Bye for now.